welcome back to MANCINIMA. This is a bit of a special one today. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing a little segment that I like to call ranking. Now that's something that Jonathan Ross isn't allowed to play. Think about that for a moment. Right, so what we're going to be doing today is we are going to be ranking the Scream movies from the Scream franchise. This will be all 6 movies that are currently released, from the recent one, Scream 6, right up to the original. But it's not going to be in that order. What we're going to be doing is I'm going to be saying to you, this is my least favourite Scream movie first, and we're going to work our way up to my favourite. Okay, so without further ado, what I will just say is if we can just quickly go through the usual routine. Please like the video, please subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel, don't subscribe if you've already subscribed. Please hit the notification bell for notification of the new videos, and also please come and have a chat with me in the comments and tell me what your top 6 Scream films are in which order. Okay, so without further ado, let's talk about the first film. And so to the bottom of our list, unfortunately, is a Wes Craven directed entry, which is the year 2000's Scream 3. Now, although this is directed by Wes Craven, and very competently, it must be said, it wasn't written by Kevin Williamson, who has written Scream 1 and Scream 2. This one was written by Ehren Kruger, no relation to Freddy Krueger. Kevin Williamson did provide notes to Ehren, and Ehren looked at them and discarded them, and unfortunately that's probably the reason why we ended up with the film that we did. Unfortunately, Scream 3 does tend to lean into the sillier side of the franchise. You've got some cameos by the likes of Jane, Silent Bob, who were also on the Miramax label at the time. And you've got cameos from Carrie Fisher, and there's a bit of a nod to her role in Star Wars. So it tends to play towards the sillier side rather than the scarier side. That said, it's got some fantastic moments in it. There's a great scene with Jenny McCarthy in an office, and she gets chased around a costume department kind of by a Ghostface. And there's a super fantastic opening sequence with Cotton Weary, played by Lee Schreiber, of course. And it's one of the, again, it's one of the better opening sequences across the Scream franchise. So Scream 3, probably one of the weaker movies in the series. It's very silly, loads of silly stunts. The kills are okay, and the final reveal was a bit of a so what, you know, it didn't really have the impact that the Scream 1 and Scream 2 had. So that's why Scream 3 sits at number 6 on my list. And so at number 5 on my list, unfortunately, is another Wes Craven entry, and that is Scream 4 from the year 2011. So this came 11 years after the last entry, obviously Scream 3, which came out in 2000, and it kind of felt a little bit unnecessary. Although this one was written again by Kevin Williamson, and of course it had Wes back as director and all the main cast from the previous films, or at least all the survivors from the previous movie, yeah, it just felt unnecessary. It came out of the blue, a little bit like Toy Story 4. It's one of those number 4 sequels that turns up, and you were quite happy with the trilogy that you had, although Scream 3 was kind of a weak ending to that trilogy. I don't know if that was the reason why it came about, if they were trying to make amends. But yeah, it just felt a little bit weak overall. The characters were okay. They weren't as outstanding as those that you had in the, certainly not as good as the ones that you had in the first 2 Scream movies. But it did introduce us to Hayden Panettiere's Kirby Reed, and that's a great character. She was very smart, very sassy, so she was a great addition to the characters, and she fit in very well. But some of the other characters were just kind of weak cannon fodder, and the killer reveal was one of the worst ones across the series. I think it was one of the weakest ones. They didn't really stack up, and it kind of ended, and then it went to a hospital, and then it kind of ended again. It just wasn't powerful enough an ending for me. I think Scream 4, like I said, it's just an unnecessary sequel that came out of the blue, and we didn't really need it. So that's why Scream 4 ranks at number 5 in my list. And so on to the 4th film on my list, which is Scream. No, not that one. I'm talking about the one that was actually Scream 5, but they just released it as Scream. The reason I didn't really like this one, or that it ranks a little bit low in my list, is that I couldn't attach myself to the new cast. When I watched the original movie, you had characters such as Randy, Dewey, Gail, Sydney, Stu. I instantly liked those characters, whether they were good or bad. They had a unique characteristic each that I could latch onto, and I loved those characters, and I was worried about their fate. Going into this new movie, I felt the characters were kind of bland. The characters of Sam and Tara and Chad and Mindy, they're good characters, but they're just not strong. They're not unique enough. Mindy and, well, especially Mindy, was riffing off of Randy's character from the original Scream, but she's not quite as quirky and not quite as interesting. So I found the characters a little bit bland in this Scream 2022. However, the film did have a saving grace. It did bring back Gail, Dewey, and of course Sydney, and they raised the interest in the movie for me. But they didn't really arrive until later on in the film, especially Sydney, who arrived kind of for the last act of the movie. It had some great kills, had some interesting kills. But what can I say about the killer reveal? I felt that Amber and Richie were just really, really weak, and their motives were really weak. Of course, they were riffing off that final scene in the kitchen from the original Scream, and there were parts in the entire movie that were riffing off the original Scream. Obviously, that's a way to do a reinvention. But on the whole, it was good. It was entertaining. It was probably one of the better Scream movies in recent years. But you know, I didn't really have that attachment to the characters. So for me, that's why Scream or Scream 5 ranks at number 4 on my list. And so on to the number 3 spot in my top 6, if you like, Scream movies. Something that I only saw last night, and that is Scream 6. It's rocketed right into the 3rd place. Really enjoyed this film. I watched it back to back with Scream 5. So we had Scream 5 shown at 6 o'clock, and then about 8:30, Scream 6 came on. And that was a good thing for me because it reintroduced me to the characters of Sam, Tara, Mindy, and Chad. And I got to watch them in that first Scream 5, Scream 2022 movie again. And you see a nice character progression by the time you get to number 6. So I actually begun to like and emphasise with the characters this time around. They are a bit more fleshed out. They are a bit more interesting. They've got a lot more to say for themselves, and they form what they call the core 4. Other characters are introduced, of course. Some of them are cannon fodder. Some of them are a bit suspicious, and that is done very well as well. So this was a better entry, I think, rather than Scream 2022 or Scream 5. The story develops very, very well. New York is a nice backdrop, although you don't get to see many of the famous landmarks. I think you get to see Central Park, but you don't get to see any of the skyscrapers or anything like that. It has a superb opening sequence, one of the best opening sequences that I've ever seen across the Scream franchise. Really had me on the edge of my seat, didn't know where I was going to go with it, and it had a different mood from the previous Scream opening sequences, so that's one to look out for. The disappointing aspect of this movie is once again the killer reveal. They just seem to be the law of diminishing returns when it comes to killer reveals. The killers don't really have a strong motive. They're kind of thrown in at the end, and you just feel that the whole thing's weak again. I just wish that the killers had a real strong reason for doing what they do, but they're just out there slashing people up and hey, you do this and hey, you did that kind of thing, and it didn't really wash with me. That said, that shouldn't be a reason not to see the movie. Scream 6 is an absolutely fantastic movie, one of the best in the franchise, and Ghostface is super violent in this, super fast, and it's one of the goriest films in the series as well. So yeah, Scream 6 is definitely in my top 3. And so on to the number 2 spot on my list, which is Scream 2 from 1998. Written by Kevin Williamson, directed once again by Wes Craven. This was an absolutely superb sequel. We had returning characters Randy, Sydney, Gail and Dewey, and of course a bunch of new characters. And what I liked about this movie is that the new characters were instantly as likeable as the original cast. So that's an issue that I found across the other sequels, is that when you go into the movies and you watch these new characters get introduced, some of them just don't hit hard. You know, you don't feel for them, you don't emphasise for them, you don't worry about their welfare, and you're not suspicious about them. Those first 2 Scream movies did that superbly, and it's kind of tailed off since then. So that's something I'd like to see in future Scream sequels, is take a little bit more time making the characters a little bit more lovable, a little bit more likeable, and then we can be suspicious of them, and then we can be worried for them and that kind of thing. It hasn't really happened for me, personally, since Scream 2. But however, yes, this was a great film, lots of scary moments. Of course, one of the lead characters is taken out fairly early on in the film, so R.I.P. Randy. His death scene is shocking, and it basically says that anybody could be at risk, and that's a really good thing in this film. It really makes you think that maybe Sydney could go, or maybe Gail could go, or Dewey could go. And it really put you on the edge of your seat. Again, some great kill moments in the movie, some great characterization. There's some humorous moments as well, as there was in the first film. And I would like to say that the killer reveals were superb in this. They actually had reason to do what they were doing. Of course, you had Mrs. Loomis, Billy's mother. Obviously, he was killed in the first movie. And then you just had nutty, crazy Mickey. And then, of course, throw into the mix Cotton Weary again, and you're not sure which way he's going to go, whether he's going to be a bad guy or a good guy, and the way that will benefit him. So yes, Scream 2 was a superb sequel, absolutely amazing follow-up to that first movie, and it sits at the number 2 spot in my list. And so it should really come as no surprise that my number 1 film on my list is 1996's original Scream. Directed by Wes Craven, written by Kevin Williamson once again. This was an absolutely incredible film that changed horror movies for a period around the mid-90s. We had The Faculty, Urban Legends, I Know What You Did Last Summer, and of course Halloween H2O. All of them followed Scream's lead. They all kind of changed their template to follow the way that Scream was meta and referred to other horror movies within the context of being their own horror movie. Scream was fantastic in that it did reference these other movies throughout. It didn't really parody them, but it did kind of lean into the rules, if you like, and the regulations of the horror movie while becoming a superb horror movie in its own right. Cast were absolutely amazing. Loved every single one of them as soon as they appeared on the screen. There was not one of them that I didn't like the way they acted or the way that they portrayed their characters, and they've all gone on to become absolutely classic characters. Each of them a little bit quirky, so you were worried about them for one period and then you were suspicious of them the next. And that's a great thing that Wes Craven did. He kind of shifted the suspicion from one character to the next. Whether those characters were going to be the killer or not, you just didn't know. And the only way you would find out is whether that character got killed off, and then you think, oh well, it can't be them, and then your suspicion shifted onto somebody else. And he did a superb job of that. And of course Kevin Williamson had an amazing script. Neve Campbell being the leading lady was incredible. And what can I say about the two killers? Billy and Stu, what an amazing ending. That ending is going to be parodied and referenced and looked at and studied and re-represented for many, many years to come. It's an absolutely classic moment in cinema, that scene that takes place in the kitchen. Of course it got referenced within Scream 2022 again. Yeah, Scream is my absolute favourite of the Scream franchise. I don't ever see that changing unless they come up with a super sequel, but I can't ever see that changing. Scream now deserves to hold its head high amongst those films that it's been referencing. So amongst Halloween, Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, if you look at those films, Scream deserves to be up there with them because it is a classic of all time. So there you go, that is my countdown, or if you like, my ranking, Jonathan Ross and How to Play, of the Scream franchise, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Please let me know what your ranking of the Scream franchise is, where you put certain films, whether my favourite films are your favourite films or whether you disagree. Please come and have a chat with me in the comments and let me know what you think. Thank you once again for watching this. It has been a little bit of a special one, but I thought I'd get it out while Scream is still kind of in the air. If you've liked this video, please hit the thumbs up button, please subscribe to the channel, please hit the notification bell, and please certainly come and have a chat with me down in the comments. So until we come back with another MANCINIMA video, I will see you all soon. Take care and stay scary.